Today we're going to do something we haven't done in quite some time and take a look at a Total Warhammer mod. Today's mod, Rise of the Chaos Empire, comes to us thanks to Loremasters Corax. That guy. Now, on the tin, all this supposedly does is add in units from the Beastmen and Norskin rosters into the Warriors of Chaos roster. However, it's actually a lot more than that if you get under it. In addition to both of those rosters working with even extracurricular Chaos armies, such as the Cabal, he's also gone through and added in a whole bunch of unique God-aligned variants for the Norskin and Beastmen units that you get. And this might sound like a small detail to you, but if you're like me and you actually have an excessively modded Chaos roster, wherein you can actually pick monogod armies, this goes from being like, you know, a somewhat useful kind of nice mod to absolutely incredible to use. If you're watching the background footage, of course, I was running a Tzeentch aligned army, so ordinarily having access to things like the Beastmen or Norskin rosters wouldn't have actually added anything useful for me. But because there is God-aligned units in this, I had absolutely zero trouble slotting over things like Sandbulls and Sandgors into my army without breaking my theme in any way, shape, or form. But things go even further still. If you happen to use Ultimate Chaos, like I do, for example, there's building queues in here that give discounts to Tzeentch-aligned units, of which your additional units are also part of. And I mean, I'm mentioning Tzeentch a lot here, but this isn't exclusive to Tzeentch in any way, shape, or form. You know, if you want to do a Khornate army, an Urglish army, a Slaaneshi army, all of those will follow the exact same idea. And of course, if you want an unaligned army, because those can also be pretty fun, you still have the standard models for all these units. You still have the standard Norskin roster, you still have the standard Beastmen roster, and they're totally competent. They actually slot in really well with the Warriors of Chaos lineup anyways, so you've got even more options if you decide to go that route. And if this is where things had ended, this would already be a fairly impressive mod, but Loremasters Corax isn't lazy like myself, so they've actually gone through and added in a whole bunch of work into the campaign side of things that I feel like it pays dividends. So because these new things all have their own unique buildings, there's 6 new buildings in fact for the campaign, you can actually get really super focused horde armies, which I really appreciated. One of the kind of generic problems, or let me rephrase that, one of the problems with the generic Warriors of Chaos in the vanilla game is that every horde kind of ends up feeling the same, whereas when you go this route and every horde has its own unique niche, you have a reason to actually focus down and use specific hordes. And again, I mentioned Ultimate Chaos earlier. Ultimate Chaos does have a lot of roster bloat ordinarily, but when you can specifically focus down certain hordes onto extremely specific roles, that roster bloat actually stops being a negative and starts coming back to being a positive again. Now having a bunch of different variants for a specific task might actually be worthwhile, because you might have specific bonuses to how you go about that specific task. So, like I said, this is a mod that on its own would have been pretty nice and helpful, but it really punches above its weight here. But of course, no mod review would be complete without our big 2 standards, balance and compatibility. Let's start with the former, balance. This is completely 100% a complete side grade from vanilla. You're not going to find yourself overpowered by this, you're not going to find yourself underpowered by these options. These are just alternative options to let you go through the campaign. Now, again, technically speaking, yes, if you're playing with an excessively modded playthrough, these additional options can actually, you know, make them a little bit more powerful, but that's less about making them more powerful than vanilla and more about making the less powerful options within those mods actually useful again. So balance is in no way, shape, or form a concern. So then how about compatibility? Well, I mean, if you haven't figured it out by the rest of the mod review so far, compatibility is phenomenal. I mean, I mentioned Ultimate Chaos a bunch of times, which is ordinarily an extremely finicky mod for other mods to play nice with. But apart from the fact it plays nice with that, I mean, I've also got of Men and Monsters running. I have a few Beastmen roster editions running. I've got a bunch of Warriors of Chaos roster editions running, a bunch of Legendary Lords running. Like, I have a ton of mods, and this didn't seem to fight absolutely any of them. I'm actually thoroughly impressed at how laid back and compatible this did seem to be. So conclusion time then. Should you get Rise of the Chaos Empire? Well, yeah, absolutely. On its own and from vanilla, it's, you know, kind of niche and nice to have, but like I said, if you're like me and you're already running an extensively modified Warriors of Chaos roster, this goes from being, you know, kind of a nice to have to, I would argue, almost kind of a mandatory thing to have. This makes the Warriors of Chaos roster, when it's super bloated up, actually useful for every player to use. But anyways, that's going to wrap it up for this one. I want to thank Loremaster Corax for putting this onto my radar, and I want to thank all of you for watching. I'll see you all in the next one.